Aaron? Yeah. Done. Okay, we should be on air. I'll post the link here. Okay. Don't stand on the button. Okay. Here we go. Last week, we came up with a little to-do list that we could do, things that we thought would be good to do last week. That included writing a blog post about Bad Camp, which we have. Thank you, Jason. Sending a newsletter based on the 114 blog post, which we don't have yet. Usually that newsletter waits 2 weeks and goes out with the bug fix release, but we should probably get a draft of it going sooner rather than later. I have not yet talked to the folks at Facet Interactive. Tim, you'd mentioned some interest in taking over the newsletter or, I don't know, being involved somehow. So I don't know if you want to try and do this one without them and see if that works. Did you end up getting access to MailChimp?
At least limited. I'll just check quick.
Okay, well, ping me.
Go ahead.
Maybe if it doesn't work and we can revisit, or if you don't have time, I can ping the folks at Facet. I know there's a lot going on right now. We were supposed to write tweets and Facebook posts about Bad Camp stuff. I was very bad and did not do Facebook, but I think I had scheduled stuff the week before that went out last week because there was still stuff going out last week, so that was lucky. But I'll do that again this week. Tweets, I noticed, Tim, you did a great job with announcing various things, so carry on, good work.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have updated the roadmap. I think that was actually updated maybe right before the preview release. We published the change notice document, and last week we mentioned it would be good to create a new checklist for preview releases that matches or is similar to our checklist for minor version releases. And I don't think that's been done yet. So unless Gregory, you did it when I wasn't paying attention.
So I did what?
Probably not. Create a checklist for preview release.
No.
Okay.
I think Nate did.
I will take that one on. And move it to this week's list.
Oh, as in make the documentation like the procedure thing document?
Yes.
No, I haven't done that. Sorry.
Okay. So for this week, I've carried over the things that I think we should do. One question about the newsletter is that we are about 2 weeks away from Bad Camp, and we are still 1 week away from bug fix release. And I didn't know if it would make sense to send the newsletter early, because the sooner we get information out about Bad Camp, the better. Or we could send a Bad Camp only newsletter and then do a release newsletter maybe after Bad Camp as like a follow-up. So I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on that. And my only concern is that if there are people that will want to come to Bad Camp and we only give them 1 week's notice, they won't have time to arrangements to do that. No thoughts? Okay.
I got distracted for a second. You were talking about the newsletter. I do have access to MailChimp. I'm not 100% sure if I have all the access I need, but I can try it. Okay. And I'm willing to try that. In terms of you were asking about the timing, and then I missed the end.
Yeah. So I kind of answer. It was basically like, if we stick to our schedule, we would wait another week before sending the newsletter. But is that too close to Bad Camp to be promoting Bad Camp? Should we try and send it sooner? And I think my instinct would be yes, if it's ready, but also if it's not, we can use that whole week.
I kind of feel like it's already too late, because I mean, it depends on where people are coming from. If we're trying to promote people from in the Berkeley area, then probably doesn't matter. But if people are flying in, then might be
That's a good point.
stretch.
I feel like if we're just saying like, hey, people who are already coming to bad camp, here's the information. 1 week is fine. 1 week is probably a deal.
Right.
So maybe we can just phrase it that way in the newsletter. Like, if you're going to be at bad camp, here's all the stuff you should know about.
Sure, and maybe some folks in the local area still have time to reply. So, I mean, I agree. It's too late to be the best situation, but anything is still better than nothing. So
yes. And I think about the blog post, I think we should publish that today. So Jason, whenever you're ready.
Sure, I'm working on those changes now.
Okay.
I'll let you embed the form though.
Okay, that works. Okay, so that's it for the to-do list stuff. There's a bunch of other stuff that I think we could do. Like we haven't made any videos about 114. There's a couple of like animated GIFs about the new layout builder, but I think that's something that would make a really good video snip. So if somebody wants to demo that, put it on YouTube and let us share the video with people, that would be great. Any kinds of other promotion we want to do about that too.
So quickly, can I interrupt?
Yep.
I started to work on a video last night, sort of a quick tour of 1.14. And sort of two things. One, I kept just having personal or, just screw up. So that slowed it down. The other thing that I got a little bit hung up on was this issue that, which issue number is it? It's the compatibility issue with Sybasis. I think Larry opened it, 4048.
Okay.
Because, I feel like in the demonstration, I want to quickly here, we replaced the front page with flexible layout. And actually, it's not 4048. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. But did you see do you know the issue I'm talking about? It's probably 4046 here.
No, but I will look at it.
4066. Basically, there's no L- header class in the flexible layout header. So if you just switch the flexible layout into the home page, it breaks the header. Yeah. And I posted a pretty simple patch. And one of the things I was debating last night was whether or not to just go ahead and put my patch in when I did the video, so I could demonstrate what I think it should be. But that feels wrong because I don't know if the patch is going to get in.
Yeah, I mean, I think whether that patch gets in or another patch gets in, we will fix that problem in the next release. And so I think it's fair to include that patch when you're making the video.
Okay.
And if you're uncomfortable with it at the very end, you can say, this is Backdrop Core, unmodified except for this patch. And then that way people will know it's like, whatever you want to say.
Okay. Well, I think I can get a video up probably yet today because I've sort of rehearsed it last night and have most of the bugs worked out. It's just about a 10-minute quick walkthrough of the features. Actually, what I would love is to better understand what to say. If I'm going to talk about all the new features, I still don't know what to say about trusted host patterns.
Yeah, you can just
a security thing that's cool, but I don't know why. Okay.
Yeah, if you want some light reading, like bedtime reading, you can go read the Drupal.org issue. It's it's not extensive, but I think just saying to people it's a security improvement is probably enough.
Okay.
I'm going to add this to 114.1 because it has a pull request on it. It doesn't have a has pull request label, but we can add that.
I thought
it has all the other ones.
Okay.
But yeah, once it has a pull request, you can slate it for the next bug fix release. So that's what I did there. All right, back to the agenda. Other things you think we should be doing this week? Tim, you wrote a fantastic blog post, but I feel like we should do the bad camp one today and do yours probably next week. because I still want it to be sort of on the back of the excitement of this release. But I also think we need to get the Badcamp one out soon. So if anyone hasn't read Tim's blog post, please go read it. It's fantastic.
On that topic, there, if you didn't see that, there were 2 questions about can I advocate for my own issue? This were in Gitter this morning, which I assume no problem, of course.
Yeah.
And the other question was just, do I just go ahead, if I want to advocate for an issue, do I just go ahead and add myself?
Yeah.
And I want to make sure the blog post kind of answers both of those questions, so I might tweak it. I think it kind of addresses them, but.
Okay. Yeah, if you think that information also needs to be on the page about like milestone candidates or something, we can add a section or maybe another subpage or something that specifically covers issue advocates.
Yeah. Tim, were you actually asking if that is possible, what you just said, according to the policy, like someone being able to add themselves as an advocate, or were you asking if you should add that to the blog post?
I wasn't asking anything. I was pretty much saying people ask this. I think both of those things are fine. And if anyone objects, speak up. But
so maybe that should be added to the post as well, just so it's clear.
Yeah, I'm going to update the post. Yeah.
Because I think that when we introduced this notion of advocacy, we specifically said that anyone can be an advocate. They don't have to necessarily write the code. So this implies that you can add yourself for the whatever issue you're working on.
Yeah.
Sure.
But you should have a GitHub account so that you can add comments. Yes. That's sort of a requirement.
Yep.
Let's see. The only other thing on here that we haven't talked about in a while is Backdrop Planet. So we can add the aggregator module onto backdropcms.org, or we could set up another subdomain if we wanted to be separate. But we don't currently have a process for people to add their own personal blogs to the queue. So we should maybe, if we want to do that, maybe set up a separate issue somewhere. Or if we do end up making a separate subdomain, maybe that has a Git repository with a queue in it that's specifically for adding sites. And then we would need someone to sort of keep an eye on that queue, either, you know, sign up to get all of the emails from it or check on it once a week, make sure we get anyone who wants to blog about Backdrop added. Lower priority than all of the other exciting stuff we're doing, but I still think it would be good to help, you know, people spread the word about Backdrop. People find out what other people are saying about it. Is there anything else you guys think is urgent that we need to be working on that we aren't working on?
So I would say we haven't had a user group, a virtual user group for a while, and it's only urgent because if we're going to do a newsletter, I'd love to actually get it in the newsletter once. And I don't think we did one in August, and I was hoping to squeeze one in September, but actually that might be silly. So maybe I should wait and schedule one after Badcamp.
Yeah, I was thinking the first Tuesday of the month, is that Badcamp's Tuesday?
Right.
Yeah, that's not ideal. But yeah, second Tuesday might work. Yeah.
We haven't sort of held too rigidly to that schedule, but okay. So although a lot of them have been the first Tuesday. So yeah, should we go?
Sorry, what are
should we
the?
Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, what are the proposed or the things in the list for topics for the next virtual group?
So I haven't thought about it for a while. I think one of the things that kind of got us hung up was this very popular idea that we do something on testing, but me being really hesitant to schedule something on testing because I didn't have anybody to talk about testing. And I didn't, you know, like a lot of topics, I feel like I can fake it, but I can't fake it on testing. I have no idea. So if we could, like, we can still do that topic, but I really would like to make sure we have some resources there committed. Serendipity, Jeff seems to be pretty busy lately, and I had pinged him at one point and asked him if he was available, and I think he's just been too busy lately. So otherwise, we could do one just on like version 1.14. That was another thought, like here, let's do show off our features during a VOG, get feedback, talk about. That's
The reason
another
why
idea.
I was asking, I had forgotten about the testing, which is a good issue for some of us are interested. But an issue that keeps coming up, or a question I would say, is with regards to new people trying to port or move their sites to Backdrop, and then the whole layout and themes thing keeps coming up. But we have done one, and we have recorded one virtual group session about that. So I'm not sure if there's still material to be discussed, so we can have another one of those, or we can just point people to the recorded one. I'm not sure.
I think having done one doesn't eliminate doing it again, because we're learning new things. Things are changing all the time. But yeah, I'm not sure either. Does anybody else have thoughts on a good VUG topic, one that we've mentioned already or not?
I mean, I feel like that is a question that people are going to keep having. Like every time someone moves from Drupal to Backdrop, they're going to be asking the question of like, how do I get my theme layout into a layout? And I think when we covered it last time, I think I was talking about it and I didn't do a very good job. Just because there's a lot, and it's the kind of thing where I'm like, oh, it's really easy. And then you say it out loud and you're like, that is not really easy. So I think it might be good to do like a little more prep and like have maybe an example. Like, here's a real use case of a site that was using a theme in Drupal 7, and here's the template file and how I made it. And then here's the place where you can update the code to use the template instead of the default, and point that out. And that's not something like that. I think that whole thing would be excellent to have as like a show and tell piece too. So it's just something that I think it would be good to go through again. I'm not sure that having people watch the first video is going to answer all their questions.
Right.
So I watched the recorded thing. I rewatched the recorded thing after the fact, maybe a couple of weeks after that. And I tried to wear my really novice sort of like hat on. And what got me sort of like puzzled, if I was thinking like that, was the discovery phase of it, where you were mentioning how you look at the existing site and then you figure out how many layouts or whatever you need to do to create in Backdrop. And I understand that this is sort of like a big topic and it depends on a myriad of things. But still, if we had some sort of like guidance or tips, I guess.
Yeah. So this is something that I used to do in my Drupal training classes too, or at the very beginning of the class, I'd put up like a screenshot of like Amazon.com or whatever, and I'd be like, you can build a website like this. And then at the end, I would have like different boxes around it and be like, this is a view, this is a node, this is a view mode. And after people knew what those words were, it made more sense. It might be useful to do the same thing where like if we had a good example website, we could take like a screenshot and be like, this is this layout. And you can like draw boxes around and be like, here's the header, here's the content, here's the footer. And then you go to another page and you're like, this is this other layout, and here are all the columns. And then when we got to one that was custom, we could be like, you can make your own layout for this. Now that we have the new layout builder, we can go and set that up too. So that might be something that would be a really good thing to do, maybe on its own. Like we can talk about it as part of that user group meeting, but I think that that's super valuable information to have either way.
If I come up with any potential topic, I'll mention it, but my mind is blank now.
Okay. I'm gonna write.
Are you doing anything on that topic at Badcamp that you would be well positioned to recycle?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I feel like it needs to be done. You know, if we ended up having some content that could be recycled in, you know, the form of a lightning talk or something, that might be really good too. So I'm willing to work on that, even though we might not be using it at Badcamp. Maybe if I worked on it before Badcamp, we would end up using it at Badcamp. I don't know. It's not currently on the plan.
Okay. Okay. Should we do that? Is that?
Yeah. I'm going to assign that to me.
Okay. Should we do that the week after bad camp, or should we give you more time? 2 weeks after bad camp.
Let's do 2 weeks after bad camp.
Okay.
So the weekend of bad camp, I also have another event, so I have to like
Sure.
even come back. So it's gonna be it's gonna be a little stressful. So
sure.
I won't be able to be properly prepared. Anything else you think we should be working on or talking about? I mean, user group, layout discovery stuff. I mean, revisiting.
So I was thinking, like, this is an outreach sort of like related meeting. I was thinking about the fact how in my agency they always tease me about backdrop, and I keep, maybe it's the way that I present things, but I thought that a good point is that the amount, like the Drupal core statistics, like the usage statistics, show that out of the sort of like 1 million Drupal sites at this point, 800,000 of them are in D7. And I randomly, I was having this discussion, and what I said to this person is that any digital agency or freelancer that doesn't see all these guys as potential customers will just lose money. And I'm not sure if this point is being made, like, because you guys organize those events where people come, so I'm not sure how does that fit as an argument, I guess.
Yeah.
Because
it's a valid point. I don't know where to put it. Where do we make that statement?
Right.
Like, so that would be something that we targeted at Drupal agencies, right?
Yes.
And hey, you guys already have these skills. Look at this massive potential of new customers for you. I don't know how to get to only those people. I mean, we could start mixing that in with our normal tweets, right? Be like every now and then be like, hey, 800,000 Drupal 7 sites in the future.
And my assumption, like because it is an assumption, the next thing what I'm about to say is that all this huge amount of D7 sites, we do have some like 60,000 sites running D6. So some of them will definitely be one of the some of those that are forgotten or abandoned, I should say. But out of this big amount of sites, the assumption there is that most of them are hesitant for a reason, because it's been now like 4 or 5 years since the release of D8. And the assumption on our end as well is that most of these guys are hesitating because of budget constraints. Yeah, we are presenting a backdrop as an affordable solution, but we are not presenting it in conjunction with that fact, the amount of possible audience or customers, I should say. Yeah, so these guys are either potentially waiting for a magic automated migration script which will do things automatically for them. I'm not sure if it's on the works. Yes, or they are preparing to just flee to WordPress or any other solution.
Or they're preparing to not do anything to their site ever.
Yes, yeah, the abandoned thing one. My other thing was that how easy, and I don't know, it might not be our job, because some people are skeptical about the size of our community, and I did get, so I contacted one of the fellows in the forums was a Greek guy, so I contacted him because I saw in his profile that he was working for the Greek government for that region in Greece. So I was wondering if they are concerned or they're researching for a solution for their digital presence or anything like that. So I tried to contact him, and his concern was like, maybe I'm wrong, you guys, but I see that you're just a handful of guys. Like he had those kind of concerns, right? So instead of trying to convince people that that is not the case, or try to present statistics, which would be good, my thought was, and I think I brought this like a few years ago, if someone makes the jump to backdrop and then later on they decide to go to D8 or D9, would migrating from backdrop to D8 or D9 would be as easy, I guess, as D7. So would something like, you know what, if you're not ready to go to D8 or D9 now, you can go to backdrop as an immediate sort of like solution, and then go when you're ready, make the jump. Is that a valid thing? Like, and I know it's not up to us, and I wouldn't want to waste our valuable resources on testing anything like that. How like?
No, I mean, I think that's an excellent point. I've been saying that to people for a while, that, you know, Backdrop is so similar to Drupal 7 that migrating off of Backdrop is also going to be very similar to migrating off of Drupal 7. So if you were thinking about doing a migration from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 and you just needed more time, you could migrate or upgrade onto Backdrop and then migrate off. My hope would be that once they got to Backdrop, they would love it and stay. Yeah. But if that's not the case, they need something that's, you know, Drupal 8 only. You could take all of the migration scripts that work for Drupal 7 and run them on Backdrop, and I would guess that most of them would work. Like all of the fields, node, all of that stuff is the same. It would just be the configuration bits that would be different.
Yeah. So maybe what we need is a bridge between our configuration and the old way of having variables and stuff like that, I guess. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, we do still have the variables table. Like someone could just write all the stuff and put it back in, but yeah, it might be easier to just move to Drupal, like convert the YAML file, config files to YAML files one at a time or something.
Yeah, so my point of bringing this whole thing up was that for the guys that are still skeptical, and to retain the portion of Drupal in Drupal, and to also sort of like, because there's still a great portion, like my day-to-day transactions are with people that are advocates and hardcore, I should say, advocates of Drupal, and they're like, each time that I bring up Backdrop, they're like, why should we do that? So I think that we should again bring the thing on the table where we were saying you don't want them to flee to another solution. We intend to keep them in the Drupal community, and Backdrop is one way to do that. As in, like, I know that we are a separate project, but in heart we still Drupal, right? Yes, as you said, ideally people that will come to Backdrop, they will stay with Backdrop. But I wouldn't mind having those that are using Backdrop as an intermediate solution, because then we would have more exposure, I guess. Mm-hmm. People will be discussing that.
Yeah.
And less would be sort of like less thought of as outcasts, I don't know, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I like it.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little ambivalent about this. Like, we've definitely, I mean, we've been agreeing that when people are looking like, oh, can I use Backdrop and then move to Drupal 8? Like, we have that migration argument that it's really similar. But we also, like, our messaging consistently has also been like, Backdrop's not going away. Like, this isn't like a temporary shim in between Drupal 7 and 8. This is like a permanent thing. And it's interesting that, I mean, I think what you're suggesting is that we like spin it that it could be a temporary shim as an active message. Is that right? Like,
no, it not an active message, as in it wouldn't be in a literature, but when people like trainings or discussions bring up this subject, we should have sort of like used as an argument, like even in podcasts, like if people ask us the argument of, would you prefer people like from the community? Like, my point is that, let me rephrase. So if you look at the graph in the usage stats of Drupal, like this reflects the health of the community as well, and it's been stagnating. All right, so it is an indication of people going away from the community, and although it's an assumption, it all started happening the precise date when Drupal 8 was released. So the argument should be, would you prefer people going away to solutions like WordPress or other solutions, or would you rather keep them in the community until they're ready to move? And this would not be thrown out as a general message or as a policy officially, but in discussions where people are hardcore D8, D9 fellows, and they keep repeating that, they see backdrop as a threat, in other words.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's I think I pointed this out at Drupal Camp Colorado, that the backdrop like manifesto that we posted like ages ago, which apparently we reposted to backdropcms.org, but I'm trying to find that post. Do you know what the title of it is? It's like
it's the oldest news post.
I think it's called "Don't Panic." Actually,
yes, and
yeah,
it's the first. Like if you go to our mentions, it would be the first one, I think.
Here we go.
The
So
last
don't
one.
don't panic. So it's backdropcms.org/news/don't panic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna post this to Kidder.
Yeah. So.
But it's interesting that even then, like I said exactly the same thing. Like that when Drupal 8 is released, like it will be peak Drupal. Although ironically, I predicted like Drupal 8 would be supplanting Drupal 7 like really substantially, and that hasn't really happened yet. But the idea was the same, that like without backdrop, the market for Drupal shrinks, that we've hit peak Drupal, and because we're going to lose the small sites, Drupal is going to lose the small sites, I should say, that their market share percentage-wise is going to go down. Like the total numbers are going to go down just because there aren't that many large websites.
Yeah.
But if you add backdrop on top of Drupal, then you maintain the small sites and the large sites, and that you have an overall market growth. Yeah, and so it's the same. It's funny that it's like that, is basically what we're facing. It's like exactly as predicted like 5 or 6 years ago, that
with the difference that we have not acquired the expected, I guess, or the ideal amount of these 7 people, which means that people are fleeing.
Yeah, that the small sites are like really going out, and backdrop is not replacing them like we'd hoped, or not replacing as many of them as we hoped.
And from the events that you guys attend and the feedback that I get from you, I understand that there's more openness, I guess. But here in Australia, I don't know. Like the feeling is as if I'm constantly like each time that I present the idea is like I don't know. It's a resented topic, I guess. So yeah.
I feel like there's definitely some of that here, but there's also always people in the room who understand. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I get it, even if it's not for me. And that's nice to have that counter all of the people who are worried about it or grumpy about it.
I find it interesting that those same people who resent people moving to backdrop do not resent people moving to WordPress. It's like, how is WordPress better than backdrop?
It's a little weird.
Yeah. So I had a recent. I'll post a link because I meant to follow up on if the person that brought the blog post responded to my comment that was last week. It was an agency, and then when I looked at the agency a little bit further, I saw that they do both Drupal and WordPress, and it seems that they actually are saying either D8 or WordPress. So they have taken it, and the person who is sort of like, I think the CEO or the owner of the company has clearly stated that they have moved away from D7 and they start building their sites in D8, and that's it. But he seems to be a highly technical person, and one of those people that I won't phrase it in my words, or actually I would say it. So I feel that the D8 and what drove me sort of like away. I haven't moved away from the Drupal community, but I was sort of like. What made me come to Backdrop was that I saw this thing of an elite group of developers being flocked, I guess, around the Drupal and driving it in a certain way. And this person, from their comments, like that blog post, by the way, started in 2013 when the fork was out, and it was starting by saying, no, forks are not good and this will be bad for our community. But there were recent comments like a month ago, and this is what drove me to respond as well. So my point was that there are people that are actually, like within the community, that would prefer people to go WordPress. And I've heard that from our developers in the agency I work for. Like, if it's we always like the thing Drupal is now enterprise comes up, and I go, what about the small sites? Just let them go to WordPress. But these guys are guys that are not sadly contributing to either community. It's like they're
So the most actionable thing on this that I can think of is the at MidCamp. I think I was in the room when somebody approached you, Nate and Jen, about from the security team about long-term Drupal 7 support and backdrop involvement in that. And it sounded to me at the time like there were at least people in the Drupal community that were like saying we would like for backdrop to be that option. And maybe willing to actually do some things to promote that idea. I don't know if that's come up in the last 6 months since MidCamp much, or if Bad Camp might be a good time to have some conversations with people about where that's all at, and if there's something that we could actively do to promote that.
We did attempt to contact some people from the Drupal Association or within the Drupal Association, but that was like many months ago, like 8 months ago, and then it sort of like was left there. Either Jen attempted to approach them or they approached them, and then after a few months, I sort of like provoked some conversation, but it was just left there. But maybe my ideas were a bit too extreme, as in I was more or less suggesting that Backdrop does officially become a continuation of D7. Like when I say officially endorsed.
Yeah.
Like Indeed.org.
I just think there is a lot of animosity in the Drupal community, and I don't think everyone would be on board with that. There are definitely some people who want that in the Drupal community. Some very involved community members have mentioned how much they think that would be a good idea, but I don't think that there is enough support to make that happen. Or maybe it doesn't matter who's supportive and who's not. There's a power balance there that you just can't, it might not happen. I think we were kind of hoping that, the more people saw what we're doing and how we're doing it, that they would be like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, this is a different audience. This is a different trajectory. The way they're handling things is different, and it no longer is a threat. But I'm feeling like the people who think that Backdrop's a threat don't know what we're doing. Like, they're not following us. And so that's not actually happening. But yeah, there are still people who are interested in, Backdrop being in some way trying to promote Backdrop as the next step for anyone who's on Drupal 7. But they're also trying to support, Drupal 7 long-term support, and they've got good vendors that are, applying to do that too. So it is a little bit of a balancing act there.
Yeah, and this goes back to how I started this conversation. There's people in the community that just don't care to see the numbers of the Drupal usage dwindling. And they say, I don't care, this will evolve organically, and I prefer, like, they have this idea of the code being more proper now, and if that needs to happen in the expense of losing community members, they're okay with that. And then there are some agencies and individuals, I guess, that see the potential profit as well, like, because they run businesses as well. Remember, I don't do it out of a profit, so I'm not in that mindset. But I try to keep that in my head for others when I talk to them. And I guess the whole thing is like, how do we soften the edges with, contacting that portion of the community that is not hesitant, but hostile, I would say, against the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some people we're just not going to win over.
Yeah,
and it doesn't really matter, like, if you show them facts or if it's their heart you'd have to win. And I think that there are some people you just can't. You can't go ahead with logic.
Agreed. But maybe that's what I said. So you guys have more, you attend more events. That's my understanding. So maybe that's why I brought it up. I'm not sure if you had such encounters, and maybe that's why I brought those up as ideas of how to sort of like try to approach them, these guys, in an alternative way. sometimes these people avoid having these conversations, and maybe we avoid also having these conversations with them. And maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should say, hey guys, like it's a potential market. If you don't want to see it our way, just see it, I don't know.
Yeah. Here's another, if we're talking about alternative messages that we could be putting out there. Also at Drupal Camp Colorado, one individual at least was pretty adamant about us being more, I guess, combative, actually. Like, it was like, you guys are being too nice. Like, you guys are holding all these punches. You're not comparing yourselves to Drupal 8. Like, and it's true, like we compare ourselves to Drupal 7, saying we're better than Drupal 7, because nobody minds that we're saying that we're better than Drupal 7, and nobody will even argue it. You know, they're like, yeah, that's fine, you know. But like actually comparing ourselves against Drupal 8 and saying, you know, like look at the simplicity here, look at the performance, like look at the way that things are architected and the way things are streamlined. Like we could do this different approach of like just going right after Drupal 8 and being like, you know, we are better than Drupal 8 in these regards, you know, and just like going right after it, you know, and because it's not a terrible idea, because the idea that we're never going to convert some people, like just screw those people, you know, like.
So a real practical, it's a good point. I was just looking at the showcase, and actually a quick question, sort of a side point. I assume there were 2 showcases from August that hadn't been approved, and I hadn't approved them. I assume that's okay?
Yeah.
One of them had a quote, and I have a tweet scheduled with a quote from one of them.
Nice.
And the full quote is, "What I wanted was a fast, elegant CMS to replace Drupal. Once I began to work with Backdrop, I realized I had found the platform I needed." And I got nervous about that, and I just cut out the replace Drupal. So it just reads, "What I wanted was a fast, elegant CMS, ... Once I began working with Backdrop, I realized I had maybe that was too wishy-washy. Should I put the replace Drupal back in there?
I think you can put replace Drupal, and you can hashtag Drupal. So people searching for it will find this. That's totally fine.
Okay, so maybe we are being too nice. At least I.
No, when Nate was starting saying that, so pictures came into my head as if we're sort of like holding a red blanket against the bull. It's like, come on. Nah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic. That's one thing that I don't want to be. I don't want to be negative Nancy. I don't want us to be like a group of, you know, angry people, you know, like angry is not where we want to be. But it is true that we've been pulling a lot of our messaging, like trying to make sure that we don't step on any toes. And that's maybe not the best marketing approach.
It's funny now that you say that, and I will find the link and post it on Gear there. But this is how I actually, like, it's a 5 or 6 paragraph reply on that post that I mentioned earlier. And how I start is like, please don't be offended by my tone in the next 2 paragraphs. I just need to get it. I just need to get it out of my system, because what they were saying above, like, was borderline offensive to a portion of the Drupal community. Like, you're not good developers. You should progress. You should more. You know, the usual thing. But yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's like, as I said, I don't feel that because I'm a passive guy, I don't feel that we should be provocative, as in make that an official policy or have it somewhere in b.org stated. But each time that the discussion comes up with people of that mindset, maybe we should sort of like, because it is my understanding, and maybe I could be wrong, that these people are less about the community and more about profit. So
or code. If they're super passionate about this being, you know, the right way to code, maybe profit doesn't matter to them either.
Yeah. Well, there's also just like a small amount of like, just like, you know, platform, what's the right word? Platform, like
loyalty.
Thank you. Yeah. Where it's just like, this is the platform I have, so therefore it's the platform I promote. You know, it's kind of like,
guess.
I hate to compare it quite like this, but like it's like video game systems where it's like if you have an Xbox, you think an Xbox is better, and if you have a PlayStation, you think a PlayStation is better, and you'll fight to the death against somebody else that has the opposite platform just because you don't have one. You know, it's completely ridiculous.
First of all, fair enough, because we might be doing the same thing, and secondly, I actually had one person, like when I was, there's a Drupal New Zealand and Australia challenge, when at some point there was an event and I said, hey, would you guys be interested in a backdrop session? One guy that has actually been away from Australia and was not going to attend anyway, like he was in Canada or something. He was like, this is a Drupal event. I don't know what you're talking about. So he was like full on.
So
I don't want to see any other, platforms or things mentioned in a Drupal related event, which is in contrast like, what was the motto? Get off the island, like embrace other technologies and like.
Yeah. So if there's nothing else, I have another quick question.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a development question or an outreach question, but it's because it's about Tugboat, which is obviously an outreach tool. I don't know if Nate or Jen, if either of you saw this, but I ran into just a problem on Tugboat, that it's not behaving the same way as my my 1.1 version on my local environment. Basically, the specifics are, and I created an issue. I put it in backdrop.org issue queue because, titled it Tugboat. So we could talk about that during the development meeting, but it concerns me a little bit because I don't know if there's other issues like that, right, where Tugboat is behaving weird.
The two issues that I know of is one, this that you mentioned. I haven't tested it, but I trust you that you're seeing what you're saying you're seeing. And the other one is that you cannot install contrib projects at the moment. So these would ideally be, and 1/3 that is a minor one is during the 1.13 release, I posted a comment to when we fixed the demo in our the agency I worked for, and the people that tested it came back, at least 2 people, and said, "What? I have to go through the installer? You already lost me." They were kidding, of course. They were just teasing me, but it was a valid point. That when they start a demo, they expect to just be logged in and just test it.
Yeah.
Try to start playing with it. So these are the 3 things that I know that are Tugboat related, and it's a valid sort of like pursue, because it's one of the things that the first things that we mentioned. Like if you want to test it, there you go.
Yeah,
so
the caveat that we had there was that we just didn't know. We needed them to set a username and password. And I'm thinking about this further, like I don't know why we didn't do this, that we could just run the installer, assign a random username and password, and then put that on the confirmation page.
Right. Yeah, well,
or we could
simply,
make all of them admin or something.
Yes, because Simply Testing, that's what they do in Simply Testing. Simply Testing has all admin.
Really? Huh.
You guys see that Simply Test Me moved to Tugboat? I mean, you must know that, Nate.
Yeah, they moved to Tugboat this week, actually, or last week. I don't know, very recently. So it's on Tugboat now too, actually.
No, but what I was describing is just a technical error. It's when you create a flex, and this is the flexible layout thing, which is why I wanted to do a demo using the Tugboat for flexible layouts. But when I set up a flexible layout and switch the home page to the flexible layout, all of the blocks disappear. They don't get put into the default region, which is I've tried it several times in my local 1.14 and it works fine, but it's not working on Tugboat. I set up 4 different instances and tried it 4 different times, and every time it failed. So I don't know what's different going on Tugboat and why.
We had an issue for that, right?
Yeah, we did. It was fixed before the release. That's the weird thing, is that
right.
There's something. Oh, you know what it might be, Tim?
What?
It might be my fault.
Do we have a pre-release?
When I pulled down the merge into the Tugboat repository, there were some merge conflicts, and I might not have done them correctly. Like I might have gotten one backwards and kept the current code. So I bet the fix was one of the conflicts, and I pulled the wrong side. Sure. I bet that's what happened.
Well, I was hoping it was something like that. I mean, just because that's knowable and solvable. So
yeah, and because this feature is also a flagship for 1.14,
Yep. Okay, that's all.
Okay, I'll take a look into that. You said it's in the backdrop cms.org issue queue?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll share a link and get her.
Let's go ahead and end this meeting and we'll start off the next one.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thanks for the great conversation, everyone.
Bye.
Yep.
Bye.